APACHE brave, 25. She cried alone by the dry well, but he saw what no one else could see in her. Humiliated and rejected, she pretended to fetch water just to hide her tears. An APACHE watched her in silence until he left a full pitcher at her door. Then seeds. Then an invitation. Subscribe to the channel and discover how a woman's pain became strength under the eyes of someone who truly knew how to see. Every morning at the same time, Vittoria walked to the waterfall in Serra Dourada. She carried the empty bucket in her arms, maintaining the ritual of utility. But the waterfall had been dry for months. Everyone in Aguas Claras knew this. They also knew that Vittoria didn't go there for water. She went for silence. She went to cry. Her dragging steps along the beaten dirt path told stories her voice could no longer pronounce. The simple cotton dress, always the same one, clung to her thin body from the sweat of the journey. She had been left at the altar without explanation, wedding dress ready, church decorated with cerrado flowers, guests gathered in the small chapel, and not a word from the man who disappeared with his own cowardice. Paolo, son of the richest farmer in the region, had left on the eve of the wedding, leaving only a crumpled note. "I can't." Since that day, Vittoria was seen as the leftover one. Some laughed behind her back, others avoided crossing her path at the Sunday fair. But no one asked if it still hurt. The village women whispered that she must have done something to deserve such humiliation. The men in their cachaça circles at São Joaquim's bar raised theories about her honor. Shame was a cloak that covered her without her choosing to wear it. Among those who observed, there was one. He didn't laugh, didn't avoid. He just saw. A silent Guarani, Ubirajara, who used to pass through the trails with medicinal herbs and crafts on horseback. He lived in the Quarai village, 3 leagues from the town, but came frequently to trade with the few who didn't treat him with contempt. He didn't speak to the inhabitants except when necessary, but he saw everything. His black eyes, deep as wells, held the shine of one who knows more than he tells. There was a dignity about him that intimidated the village men, even though he was shorter than most of them. That morning, when Vittoria arrived at the dry waterfall, she found something different. A small yellow APACHE sapling planted exactly in the center of the dry riverbed, where the water once fell forcefully. Beside it, a small gourd with fresh water, covered with banana leaves. Vittoria looked around, confused. There was no one in sight, only the hot cerrado wind and the distant song of a great kiskadee. She sat there, as she did every day, and drank the water slowly, feeling the freshness run down her parched throat. Her fingers gently touched the leaves of the APACHE sapling, a tree that only blooms after surviving drought. The message was clear to those who knew nature's secrets. In the village, the situation was worsening. Mayor Oswaldo called an emergency meeting in the central square. "We have less than 30 days until the last well dries up completely," he announced, wiping sweat from his forehead with a dirty handkerchief. "If we don't find a new water source, we'll have to abandon Aguas Claras. It's a matter of survival." The irony of the village's name escaped no one at that moment. It was the 4th consecutive year of drought, but they had never reached such a critical situation. Families began to organize, forming groups to search for water sources in the surroundings. No one invited Vittoria to participate. It was as if her sadness was contagious, a bad omen that no one wanted nearby in times of crisis. Upon returning to her small house at the edge of the village, Vittoria found Donna Zuleide waiting for her on the porch. The 70-year-old elder was the only one who didn't treat her like a bad luck omen. "Girl, you need to stop going to that waterfall," she said, her eyes clouded by cataracts fixed on some point beyond Vittoria's shoulder. "There's nothing there for you anymore." "It's the only place where I can breathe, Donna Zuleide," replied Vittoria, sitting next to the old woman on the worn wooden bench. "Every place in this village suffocates me with looks and whispers." Donna Zuleide took Vittoria's calloused hands between her own, even more marked by time. "You know the Indian watches you, don't you?" Vittoria shuddered. "What Indian?" "The Guarani, Ubirajara. He follows you with his eyes whenever you pass. He doesn't say anything, but he sees everything." A shiver ran down Vittoria's spine. So someone had noticed her existence beyond the mark of rejection? "He left something at the waterfall today," she confessed almost in a whisper. Donna Zuleide smiled, revealing the absence of several teeth. "Be careful, girl. The village already judges you without reason. Imagine if they knew you were receiving gifts from the Indian. That night, Vittoria couldn't sleep. Through the open window of the simple room, she watched the crescent moon bathe the dry yard in silver light. Beside the bed, in a glass of water, she had placed a branch from the EPA sapling she had brought hidden. She wondered why a man who had never addressed a word to her would make such a gesture, and why her heart, so long numbed by pain, now beat to a different rhythm when thinking about it. Meanwhile, in the Kwarai village, Ubirajara sat before the council fire. Beside him, the shaman Karai listened attentively to his report about the drought plaguing the white people's village. "They are lost," said Ubirajara. "They look for water where there is none. They destroyed the springs with their farms, and now the earth demands its price." "And the woman who cries at the dry waterfall?" asked the old shaman, whose white hair fell like a cascade over his bony shoulders. "Why do you care about her?" Ubirajara contemplated the flames for a long moment before answering. "She has eyes that see beyond. Like yours, my uncle. Eyes that respect the earth's pain." The shaman nodded slowly. "Our people know the underground river, the one the ancients called Iguaragua. It still flows, even when everything above is dry." "The whites don't deserve this knowledge," protested one of the young warriors sitting on the other side of the fire. "Let them leave. The earth will be at peace." Karai raised his wrinkled hand, silencing the young man. "The earth does not choose who drinks from its waters, and water knows no boundaries between peoples." Ubirajara lowered his head, respecting the elder's wisdom. But he knew that convincing his people would be as difficult as convincing the village inhabitants to accept help from the Guarani. Between the two worlds, there was an abyss of distrust and prejudice deeper than any Cerrado Valley. The next morning, when Vittoria arrived at the waterfall, she found not just a new water gourd, but also a small bag of seeds, and beside it, sitting on a rock, Ubirajara. Their eyes met, separated by meters of distance and centuries of misunderstanding. Neither spoke, but something was said nonetheless. His serene expression said, "I see you beyond your pain." Her teary eyes answered, "Thank you for seeing me." The silent encounter at the dry waterfall changed something inside Vittoria. As she walked back to the village, her steps seemed lighter, as if a small flame had been lit inside the chest that had been cold for so long. She contemplated the bag of seeds she now carried hidden in her dress pocket. Seeds of what? For what? The message was mysterious, but laden with meaning. Upon reaching the central square, she noticed unusual agitation. Groups of men discussed loudly, pointing to improvised maps drawn in the dirt. Women filled all available containers with rationed water from the last well. Children ran, absorbing the adults' tension without fully understanding it. That's when she saw Mariazinha, the 6-year-old girl who had lost her parents to fever the previous year. She was sitting alone on the church steps, her patched dress dirty with earth, her unkempt black hair framing her thin, sad face. Something in that solitude resonated with Vittoria. She approached slowly and sat beside the little one. "Want to see something beautiful?" she asked, taking one of the seeds from her pocket. Mariazinha looked suspicious, but childish curiosity spoke louder. She nodded timidly. "This is a Jurema seed. When planted in the right place, it grows and gives purple flowers that attract hummingbirds," explained Vittoria, though she wasn't entirely sure. She was just repeating what her grandmother had told her about Cerrado plants. The girl extended her dirty little hand, and Vittoria placed the seed in her palm. It was the first smile she saw on Mariazinha's lips. A small smile, like the seed, but equally full of possibilities. "Can we plant it?" asked the girl in an almost inaudible voice. Vittoria hesitated. Planting in times of extreme drought seemed an act of rebellion or insane hope. "Let's try," she finally answered, "but we need to find a special place for it." From that day on, Mariazinha began to follow her like a small, silent shadow. She didn't ask for anything, didn't talk much, she was just there. And Vittoria, who had spent so long avoiding others, found unexpected comfort in the orphaned girl's presence. The next morning, when she returned to the waterfall, Vittoria was no longer alone. Mariazinha had insisted on accompanying her, clinging to her skirt with surprising determination for someone so small. "It's dangerous, little one. The trail is long and the sun is strong," she tried to argue. "I'm not afraid," replied the girl, with that peculiar courage of children who have already faced losses greater than their size. Ubirajara was already there when they arrived, this time with a spotted horse tied to a dried-up shrub. His eyes widened slightly upon seeing the child, but soon his face returned to its usual serene expression. "Good morning," said Vittoria, surprising herself with her own boldness. It was the first word she had directly addressed to him. Ubirajara slightly inclined his head in response, and then looked at Maria Zina, who was partially hiding behind Vittoria's skirts. "Her name is Maria Zina," explained Vittoria. "She lost her parents. She's alone like—" She stopped, but the "like me" hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Ubirajara approached, crouched to the girl's height, and extended his open hand. In his palm was a small bracelet of colored seeds. "For protection," he said in a deep voice with a marked accent. "Tukuma keeps sadness away." Maria Zina looked at Vittoria, as if asking permission. Upon receiving an affirmative nod, she took the gift with shining eyes. "What did you plant here?" asked Vittoria, pointing to the ipe sapling that now seemed firmer despite the dry soil. "Hope," he answered simply. Then he gestured for them to follow him. Vittoria hesitated. Following a man she barely knew into the woods was a risk she wasn't sure she should take. As if reading her thoughts, Ubirajara added, "Want to show water. Hidden river. Not far." The mention of water was too tempting in times of drought, and there was something in his eyes, a raw sincerity that made her trust. "Let's go," she decided, taking Maria Zina by the hand. They walked for almost an hour, leaving the known trail and entering paths Vittoria had never traveled. The vegetation, surprisingly, became greener as they advanced. Ubirajara walked ahead, occasionally pointing to plants and saying their names in Guarani, which sounded like music to their ears. Maria Zina, despite her short legs, kept pace with admirable determination. Finally, after skirting a rock formation, they heard the sound. Running water, an almost forgotten sound in those times of drought. Vittoria's heart accelerated. As they turned the last curve of the path, they saw a narrow but vigorous stream running between moss-covered rocks, shaded by trees that seemed oblivious to the drought plaguing the region. "Iguaragua," said Ubirajara, "river that flows underneath, born in the sacred mountain." Vittoria was speechless. There, less than 2 hours from the village, desperate for water, ran a river that no one knew, or that no one had cared to know. Maria Zina immediately ran to the bank, kneeling to touch the water with her little hands, laughing with the sensation of freshness. "Why are you showing this to us?" asked Vittoria when she finally recovered her voice. Ubirajara looked deeply into her eyes before answering. "Because you cry for water that doesn't come back. Need to see water that still flows." The simplicity of the answer completely disarmed her. They sat by the stream, watching Maria Zina play with the water. Gradually, Ubirajara began to speak. He told about his village, about how the elders had predicted the great drought many years ago, about how they tried to warn the farmers who were deforesting the springs without being heard. He spoke of his people's wisdom, about nature's cycles, and about how the water that flowed there was sacred, protected by generations of Guarani. "My people don't want whites to know this place," he confessed. "They think you will destroy it, like you did with other rivers." "And why are you breaking that rule?" insisted Vittoria. Ubirajara was silent for a long moment, as if searching for the right words. "Because water has no owner, and because—" He hesitated. "Because I saw in you respect for the earth's pain." At that moment, something changed between them. It wasn't a touch, not even another word. It was a silent recognition of souls that, despite being born in different worlds, shared a fundamental understanding about loss and resilience. On the way back, Maria Zina fell asleep in Ubirajara's arms, exhausted by the adventure. He carried her with surprising gentleness for hands so calloused by hard work. As they neared the village, Vittoria stopped him. "We can't be seen together," she said with regret in her voice. "The village, they wouldn't understand." "I know," he responded, carefully transferring the sleeping girl to her arms. "Come back tomorrow, bring containers, take water to those who need it." "You really want to help the village after how they treat your people?" Ubirajara adjusted the straw hat over his black hair before answering. "I don't help the village, I help life." The next morning, when Vittoria left home with 2 large gourds, she found Maria Zina waiting for her, holding a small tin bucket. The girl smiled, the bracelet of colored seeds proudly displayed on her thin wrist. Together they followed the path to the waterfall. But this time something was different. They realized they were being followed. Teodoro, the mayor's son, known for his sharp tongue and deep-rooted prejudices, was watching them from a distance with a suspicious expression. Vittoria squeezed Mariazinha's hand, her heart racing. What would she do if he followed them to the secret river? What would happen if the village discovered her connection with Ubirajara? As the distressing questions multiplied in her mind, Mariazinha squeezed her hand back as if to say, "We are no longer alone." And somehow, this small gesture gave her strength to continue walking, one step at a time toward the unknown. The rumor spread through the village like wildfire in dry straw. "The abandoned one is meeting with the Indian in the woods," the women whispered in the backyards, while hanging clothes that took less and less time to dry in the relentless heat. "Even taking the orphan girl with her. What a shameless affair," they added, with that perverse pleasure of finding in others' misfortunes a relief for their own miseries. Vittoria noticed the looks, now even more loaded with judgment. She noticed how doors closed when she passed, how conversations silenced, only to explode into murmurs as soon as she moved away. But something had changed inside her. She no longer bent under the weight of those gazes as before. She carried within herself the secret of the river, the memory of running water, the knowledge that there was life beyond the apparent drought. For 5 consecutive days, she and Mariazinha had gone to meet Ubirajara, bringing hidden water to their homes. The girl visibly flourished with this new routine. Her cheeks, previously hollow from malnutrition, began to gain color. Her eyes shone with a long-lost vivacity. She had started to talk more, asking about the plants that Ubirajara showed them, about the birds that still found refuge in that hidden oasis. In the Kwarai village, Ubirajara's situation wasn't much different. The young warriors watched him with growing distrust. "He brings the smell of whites when he returns," they said to Shaman Karai. "He's betraying our people, revealing our secrets." The old shaman listened in silence, eyes half closed like one who sees beyond the spoken words. On the 6th day, when Vittoria and Mariazinha arrived at the dry waterfall, Ubirajara wasn't there. In his place, a group of men from the village awaited them, among them Teodoro, Mayor Oswaldo, and Paolo. Yes, the same Paolo who had left her at the altar, returned to the village after months of absence. "So it's true," said Teodoro, with a crooked smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The rejected one became an Indian's lover." Vittoria instinctively placed Mariazinha behind her, protecting her. "What do you want?" she asked, with a firmness in her voice that surprised everyone, including herself. "We want to know where the water is that you two have been hiding," replied the mayor, stepping forward. "Teodoro saw you returning with full containers. While the entire village suffers with rationing, you two seem to have no problems." "And is that a crime, looking for water when everyone needs it?" retorted Vittoria. "The crime is lying with a savage," spat Teodoro. "That's disgusting. You dishonor your parents' memory." The mention of her parents, deceased for years, hit Vittoria like a slap. But before she could respond, a voice interrupted the discussion. "Leave them alone." Donna Zuleide appeared on the trail, leaning on her carved wooden cane. Her steps were slow but determined. "What are you doing here, Donna Zuleide?" asked the mayor, visibly uncomfortable with the respected elder's presence. "I came to prevent you foolish men from committing yet another injustice against those who are just trying to survive," she replied, positioning herself next to Vittoria and Mariazinha. "This girl was abandoned by a coward," she pointed to Paolo, who lowered his eyes, "and then abandoned by all of you, who prefer to judge rather than extend a hand. And now that she has found a way not to wither like the dry land, you come to attack her." A heavy silence fell over the group. Paolo seemed to want the ground to open beneath his feet. "We are desperate, Donna Zuleide," argued the mayor in a more conciliatory tone. "The last well is almost dry. We have less than 15 days before the situation becomes unsustainable. And you think threatening 2 defenseless women is the solution?" The old woman's voice trembled with indignation. "What kind of men are you?" Before the discussion could continue, a child's scream cut through the air. Mariazinha had stepped away a few paces and was now pointing to the side trail where Ubirajara had appeared, accompanied by Shaman Karai and 2 more Guarani. The silence that followed was almost palpable. 2 worlds that for generations had avoided each other, now face to face in the desolate scenario of the dry waterfall. "What are they doing here?" muttered Teodoro, instinctively bringing his hand to his waist, where he probably carried a knife. "We come in peace, said Karai, in surprisingly fluent Portuguese. "I've spoken the white man's language since the days when priests still tried to convert us." His ironic smile revealed teeth worn by time. "My nephew Ubirajara told me about the woman who cries at the dry waterfall, and about the water running out in the village." Donna Zuleide stepped forward, her eyes clouded by cataracts fixed in the direction of the shaman's voice. "Karai, is it really you, old friend?" The shaman narrowed his eyes, trying to recognize the source of that familiar voice. "Zuleide, the girl who knew the names of all plants?" "I haven't been a girl for many decades, Karai," laughed Donna Zuleide, "and you're no longer the young apprentice who showed me the secrets of the forest." To everyone's amazement, the two elders embraced, laughing like old friends who meet again after a long separation. "You know each other?" asked the mayor, completely disconcerted. Donna Zuleide nodded, still holding the shaman's wrinkled hands in hers. "We met when we were young, before fences and prejudice separated us. Karai taught me much of what I know about healing plants. And Zuleide taught me that not all whites have hearts of stone," added the shaman. That unexpected meeting completely changed the tone of the confrontation. How could they remain hostile when they had before them living proof that friendship between the two peoples was possible? While the adults talked, trying to process that twist, Maria Xenia timidly approached Ubirajara and pulled the hem of his shirt. "Where's the water today?" she asked, with the innocence typical of children. "I'm thirsty." Ubirajara smiled and crouched to her height. "Today I didn't bring water, little one, but I brought something better." From the leather bag he carried, he took out a strange flower with purple petals and a yellow center. "Rainflower," he explained, "only appears when water is coming." The girl's eyes widened. "Is it going to rain?" "Maybe," he answered, "but we don't live just from the sky's rain." He looked meaningfully at Vittoria, who immediately understood what he wanted to say. It was time to reveal the river's secret. "There is water," she said, turning to the village men. "Not far from here. A stream that never dries, protected by the forest and mountains." "And why didn't you tell us before?" accused Teodoro. "While we suffered with thirst." "Because you never asked," Vittoria replied simply. "You were too busy judging me to notice that I might have something to offer, besides my misfortune to feed your gossip." The mayor cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Can you take us to this water?" Vittoria looked at Ubirajara, who exchanged a glance with the shaman. After a tense moment, Karai nodded slightly. "We can," she answered, "but with one condition." "What condition?" asked Paolo, speaking for the first time since the beginning of the confrontation. "That the water be shared between the village and the Quarai village. No fences, no owners." The proposal fell like a stone in the lake of tradition, sharing resources with the Indians. It was unthinkable for many there, but thirst was stronger than prejudice. "We have a deal," the mayor finally said, extending his hand first to Vittoria and then, hesitantly, to Ubirajara and Karai. That same afternoon, a mixed delegation, formed by village men and Guarani from the village, followed Vittoria and Ubirajara to the hidden stream. The reaction upon seeing the running, crystal-clear water was of pure astonishment and joy. Plans were immediately drawn to channel part of that water to the village, respecting the natural course and ensuring the river wouldn't dry up. The Guarani, profound knowers of the region, indicated other smaller springs that could be recovered with proper work. For the first time in generations, the two peoples worked together, united by the most basic need of all: water. While the men animatedly discussed the technical details, Vittoria observed from a distance, sitting in the shade of a tree with Maria Xenia asleep in her lap. She felt a peace she hadn't experienced since before being abandoned at the altar. She had found her purpose, to be the bridge between two worlds that feared each other out of pure ignorance. So absorbed was she in her thoughts that she didn't notice Paolo approaching until he sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I was a fool," he said without looking her in the eyes. "A coward." Vittoria didn't respond immediately. She looked at the man she had once loved with all her heart and realized she felt nothing, neither anger nor love nor hurt, just a quiet indifference. "Yes, you were," she finally agreed, "but I thank you for it now." Paolo stared at her, surprised. "You thank me?" If we had gotten married, I would never have discovered my own strength, would never have met Ubirajara, nor found the river, nor adopted Maria Xenia in my heart. She caressed the sleeping girl's hair. Your cowardice freed me, Paulo, and for that, I am grateful. He lowered his head, defeated, and at the same time relieved not to face the hatred he expected. When he moved away, Ubirajara took his place sitting beside Vittoria in silence. Will your people accept this? She asked, watching the village men and the Guarani talking, still with some reserve but without the previous hostility. Some yes, others no, he replied, in his direct way. Like your people. I don't know if this will work, confessed Vittoria. There's so much hatred, so much distrust. Ubirajara pointed to Maria Xenia sleeping peacefully. She has no fear. She hasn't learned to hate yet. It's for her and for those who will come after that we must try. At that moment, as if nature wanted to seal the agreement between the peoples, the sky suddenly darkened. A distant thunder reverberated through the mountains, and then, for the first time in more than a year, thick drops of rain began to fall. First sparse, then in a deluge that washed the parched earth, and hearts hardened by distrust. The rain lasted 3 days and 3 nights, as if the sky wanted to compensate for the long period of absence. The roofs of Aguas Claras, dry for so long, now dripped on all sides. The cisterns, empty for months, overflowed. Children ran through the muddy streets, laughing and dancing under the falling water, while adults watched from porches with a mixture of relief and distrust. Had the rain returned to stay? Or was it just a brief respite in the long drought? At Vittoria's house, Maria Xenia had settled in permanently. There was no formal decision, no papers signed. It simply happened, like the rain, natural, necessary, inevitable. The girl had brought her few belongings in a small bundle and now occupied the small back room which Vittoria had arranged with the care of someone preparing a nest. In the Quarai village, the mood was one of contained celebration. The rain was seen as a sign of approval from the ancestors for the new alliance with the whites. Even the most resistant young warriors began to yield, seeing how shared knowledge could benefit everyone. Ubirajara, previously marginalized for his sympathy towards the village inhabitants, was now frequently consulted about the details of the water-sharing agreement. When the sky finally cleared, revealing a blue almost painful in its intensity, the reality of the challenges ahead returned. The rain had been a blessing, but it didn't solve all problems. The project to channel water from the stream to the village would require hard work and continuous cooperation. Furthermore, not everyone was convinced of the new friendship between Indians and whites. They're meeting again today, commented Donna Zuleide, while preparing an herbal tea in Vittoria's kitchen. Teodoro and some farmers, they don't like the idea of sharing water with the Guarani. They think it belongs to whoever owns the land. Vittoria sighed, crushing basil leaves for lunch. Maria Xenia was in the yard, tending to the seedlings they had planted with Ubirajara's seeds. They never cared about the water before, only now that they discovered it exists do they want to own it. Donna Zuleide nodded, her cloudy eyes fixed on the window, as if she could see through it the uncertain future that was unfolding. Karai told me that some young people from the village are also restless. They think Ubirajara betrayed the people by revealing the sacred river. The old woman took a sip of tea before continuing. Prejudice has many faces, my daughter. Sometimes it disguises itself as protection, sometimes as tradition, but deep down it's always fear of the different. The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted the conversation. Maria Xenia burst into the kitchen, her dress dirty with earth, her face illuminated by a radiant smile. Aunt Vittoria, the seeds, they're sprouting. The transformation of the girl in the last few days was almost as miraculous as the arrival of the rain. From a quiet and sad child, she had become talkative and full of energy. Vittoria followed her to the yard, where small green points emerged from the dark earth, still moist from the recent rain. See? See? Insisted Maria Xenia, kneeling beside the improvised garden bed. Ubirajara said they would grow strong. The Guarani's name in the girl's mouth sounded natural, without the weight of centuries of distrust that adults carried. For her, he was just the friend who knew the secrets of plants and animals, who told ancient stories in the afternoons by the river, who taught her Guarani words that she repeated with the ease of children. Yes, little one, they are growing, confirmed Vittoria, crouching beside her. Just like you. That afternoon, Vittoria was summoned to the village council meeting. It was unprecedented. Women rarely participated in these decisions, especially a woman who, until a few days ago, was seen as a pariah. The meeting would take place at the school, the only building large enough to accommodate representatives from the village and the Quarai village. "Want me to stay with the girl?" offered Donna Zuleide. Vittoria hesitated. Part of her wanted to protect Maria Xenia from the tensions that would certainly arise at the meeting, but another part knew that the child's presence could be a living reminder of the future they were building or destroying. "She comes with me," she decided. It's her future we're discussing after all. When they arrived at the school, the environment was already charged. On one side of the room, the village men led by Mayor Oswaldo. On the other, a smaller group of Guarani with Karai at the center, his wrinkled face impassive like an ancient ritual mask. Ubirajara was slightly apart, in a position that placed him between the two groups, neither completely on one side nor the other. Vittoria felt the weight of gazes when she entered with Maria Xenia. Some village women were present, but they remained at the back of the room like silent observers. Donna Zuleide entered right behind them and went straight to Karai's side, clearly demonstrating her position. "We are here to discuss the agreement about water," began the mayor, visibly uncomfortable with the unusual configuration of the assembly. "As everyone knows, the rain was a blessing, but we cannot depend only on the sky. The stream discovered by Vittoria and by Mr. Ubirajara," he hesitated on the words, as if unsure how to refer to the Guarani, "represents a permanent solution for our village, and for our village," added Karai with a firm voice despite his advanced age. "Water that has always been ours, protected by our ancestors." A murmur ran through the village side. Teodoro stepped forward, arms crossed in a challenging posture. "With all due respect, Mr. Shaman," the title sounded strange in his mouth, "but those lands legally belong to the municipality of Aguas Claras. There are documents that prove this." "Papers," replied Karai with a slight smile, "made by whites for whites. My people were there long before the papers." The tension visibly grew. Vittoria looked at Ubirajara, who remained silent, observing everything with his attentive eyes. Maria Xenia squeezed her hand, feeling the heavy atmosphere. It was Paolo, surprisingly, who tried to appease the mood. "We are all here because we need each other," he said, with a humility Vittoria had never seen in him before. "The drought affected everyone. If we fight over water, no one wins." "And what do you propose, farmer's son?" asked Karai, without hostility, just genuine curiosity. "That we work together," replied Paolo. "The channeling will benefit the village and the indigenous village. We can build a system that takes water to both places, respecting the river's natural course." "And who will control this water?" asked one of the young Guarani, distrustful. "Who will decide how much goes to each side?" A heavy silence fell over the assembly. It was the central question which everyone avoided: power. Who would have power over water, the most precious resource in times of drought? "No one," said Vittoria, her voice surprisingly strong in the silence of the room. All eyes turned to her. Water cannot be controlled by one side or the other. It needs to flow freely as it always has. "That's idealism, Vittoria," retorted the mayor. "In practice, someone will need to manage the system." "Then let it be someone from each side," she suggested. "A mixed council, with an equal number of representatives from the village and the indigenous village." More murmurs, this time from both sides. The idea was too revolutionary for some, too naive for others. The debate intensified. Voices were raised, old accusations resurrected. Prejudice, momentarily suppressed by the need for water, resurfaced with renewed force. It was then that Maria Xenia, until then quiet beside Vittoria, released her hand and walked to the center of the room. Silence fell instantly, everyone surprised by the small orphan's boldness. "Why do the grown-ups argue so much?" she asked, with the disconcerting simplicity of children. "Water doesn't belong to anyone, it's like the rain." Her eyes scanned the room, passing from face to face without distinguishing between whites and Indians. "Ubirajara taught me that water has memory, that it remembers all the places it has passed through." She turned to Karai. "And Donna Zuleide told me that our body is almost all made of water, so we are all relatives of water, aren't we?" The silence that followed had a different quality. It was no longer the tense silence of contained hostility, but the reflective silence of those confronted with a truth too simple to be refuted. Ubirajara was the first to react. He approached Maria Xenia and crouched to her height. "You're right, little one. We are all children of water." Then he stood up and faced the assembly. "I propose that the girl be part of the Water Council." The suggestion caught everyone by surprise. "A child?" questioned Teodoro with disdain. "What absurdity is this?" "It's not absurd," replied Ubirajara with dignity. "It's wisdom. The water we protect today is not for us. It's for them," he pointed to Maria Xenia, "for those who will come after. Who better to represent them than a child?" The idea, initially received with skepticism, began to gain strength. Others suggested that the council should also include the elders, Donna Zuleide and Karai, as representatives of accumulated wisdom, and Vittoria and Ubirajara as bridges between the two worlds. The debate continued, but now in a different tone. The girl's presence in the center of the room had changed something fundamental. When they finally reached an agreement, it was already night. The Water Council, as it was named, would be formed by an equal number of representatives from the village and the indigenous village, including Maria Xenia, as the voice of future generations. It would work not only for water distribution, but also for the recovery of degraded springs, the reforestation of banks, the conscious use of the resource in times of abundance and scarcity. When Vittoria, Maria Xenia, and Ubirajara left the school, the starry sky shone above them with unusual intensity. The girl, exhausted but happy, fell asleep in the Guarani's arms before they even reached Vittoria's house. "She changed everything," commented Vittoria, observing the serene face of the sleeping child. "With a few simple words, she did what hours of debate couldn't achieve." Ubirajara nodded. "Children see without the blindfolds we put on over time. They see what is, not what we think should be." Upon reaching the door of the house, Ubirajara carefully transferred Maria Xenia to Vittoria's arms. For a moment they were very close, their faces inches apart, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. "Stay," she whispered, surprising herself with her boldness. "The village will talk," he responded, without backing away. "They always talk. I no longer care." "And your village?" "They will also talk, but the river doesn't care who drinks from its waters." The kiss that followed was like rain after a long drought, necessary, vital, inevitable. In the months that followed, Aguas Claras transformed. The water distribution system, built with techniques that blended traditional Guarani knowledge with the technology available in the village, began to function even before the return of the dry season. The seeds planted by Maria Xenia grew, becoming a lush garden that became a meeting point for children from the village and the indigenous village. Slowly, distrust gave way to curiosity and then to acceptance. Ubirajara began to openly frequent Vittoria's house, although he maintained his place in the Quarai village. They became an unconventional family, the woman who had been abandoned, the Indian who had crossed invisible borders, and the orphan girl who had united them. Donna Zuleide and Karai, officially recognized as guardian elders of the Water Council, revived their old friendship. They spent long afternoons sharing knowledge about medicinal plants, ancient stories, remedies for ailments of body and soul. Together, they began a work of recording this knowledge so it wouldn't be lost with the passage of time. Paulo found redemption in hard work. Using his lands and influence, he initiated a project for spring recovery and reforestation that became a model for other farms in the region. Vittoria's forgiveness, which he neither expected nor deserved, transformed him deeply. Not everything was roses, of course. Prejudices rooted for generations don't dissolve overnight. There were resistances, conflicts, setbacks. Some farmers refused to participate in the agreement. Some Guarani still looked with distrust at the whites, who now frequented their lands. But with each new season, the roots of change deepened. On a golden autumn afternoon, when the sun began to set behind the mountains, Vittoria, Ubirajara, and Maria Xenia walked along the old trail to the waterfall. The water had returned to flow there, not as abundantly as in the stories of the elders, but enough to create a silver curtain over the dark rocks. "Remember when you used to come here to cry?" asked Maria Xenia, now almost 8 years old, taller and stronger, but with the same direct gaze that disarmed anyone. Vittoria smiled, squeezing the hand of the daughter her heart had chosen. "I remember. It seems like another life." "It was another life," said Ubirajara, his arm naturally encircling Vittoria's waist. "For all of us." They sat by the waterfall, observing the constant flow of water. The village could be seen in the distance, lights beginning to turn on in the windows. Beyond it, invisible from there but always present in their thoughts, the Quarai village where Mariazinha now spent half her time, learning from the elders the knowledge that previously risked being lost. "The seeds we planted are growing strong," commented Vittoria. And she wasn't referring just to the physical plants, but to everything they had built together. "As you said would happen." Ubirajara nodded, his eyes reflecting the shine of the setting sun. "Some seeds need fire to awaken, others need cold, ours needed tears." "And courage," added Mariazinha, wise beyond her years, "the courage to show the way to water." Vittoria observed her daughter and companion, feeling a fullness she had never imagined possible in the dark days, when she came to the dry waterfall to cry for a love that didn't deserve her tears. She realized that true strength had never been in resisting pain alone, but in having the courage to open herself to new paths, new possibilities, new loves. The river would continue to flow, the seasons to succeed each other, the seeds to sprout. And they would be there, as guardians not only of water, but of the hope that different worlds can meet without one having to submerge the other. That, like water and earth, we can be different in essence but inseparable in the creation of life. If you were moved by this story of encounter between different worlds and the transformative power of love and acceptance, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more narratives that touch the heart and make us reflect on life. Leave your like and share in the comments which moment from Vittoria, Ubirajara and Mariazinha's journey touched your soul the most. Was it the encounter at the hidden river, the little orphan's courage, or the rebirth of hope, like seeds after the rain?